very much for being here this evening. This is kind of the um, ending party, ending celebration, ending conversation of a really wonderful day today, where this morning we got to see the beginning of and celebrate the beginning of the restoration process for the Jewel Theater. How exciting is that?
No, thank you all for coming out tonight. We want to thank Open Design, the Jewel Theater Foundation for their vision, for creating space for this conversation. We want to thank L. Mason Events, who, if you are doing an event and at least not considering L. Mason, you're dropping the ball. I mean, you need to hire them, but if you ain't considering them, you've not done your due diligence.
And we found out this morning that Latoya is an exceptional MC. So that's going to be a new service provision through El Mason Events.
And then we also want to thank all of our guest speakers who will be coming up and um, sharing their experiences, sharing their wisdom about what has been, and helping to us to think and imagine what can and will be in the years to come as we restore the Jewel Theater.
And I just want to thank every one of you for attending this evening. This is a legacy project, and it's an incredibly special one because it's something that, it's not being rebuilt, it's not being reimagined, we're not looking at pictures of it on the wall in a gallery. It's the building. It's the bricks. It's the original bricks. It holds the spirit and the liveliness of a community through generations in those walls, and they're going to be alive again very soon. And so we're excited to have you here for this conversation and to just celebrate what this is going to mean for the community and for the city.
So, if you don't know us, my name is Stephen Butler. This is my wife, Gabrielle Butler. Uh, Thank you. Together, we are the Butlers Did It. We have a nonprofit consulting firm that, in particular, specializes and focuses on Black-led nonprofits and those that impact Northeast Oklahoma City. We don't limit ourselves, but that's our passion, right? And so we were happy to be tapped by Open Design to assist them in their fundraising for the Jewel, as well as to help MC and moderate this conversation tonight. Many of you all are familiar with the Jewel. You were able to see it in its previous form, so you know that it was designed, funded, and built in 1931 by a very entrepreneurial family, Percy and Hattie James. It was one of four that they had built, three in Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, Wewoka, and Ardmore, and one in Texas that were built during the violent era of Jim Crow. They created a space where we could see ourselves, see stories, and have community. It is the only historic Black theater still standing in Oklahoma. And so we're thankful that it still stands. We're thankful that it's Black owned. And now the Jewel is positioned to be revitalized and to be a community space, to be a hub, and to be many more things. And so we're thankful to have family members here as well to participate in that discussion.
For Stephen and I, this project is especially meaningful. I had a conversation with Miss Sherry, who is the daughter of Mr. Hurst, who is the current owner of the Jewel Theater and who worked truly tirelessly through a lot of minefields to keep ownership of that building and to make sure that it remained as it was until this day. He knew that day, he had a vision for that day. And Sherry's also a board member for the Jewel Theater Foundation. We had a very lively conversation with her and her two other sisters today. And she was like, I remember my dad used to drop us off with 35 cents to go to the movies. And I remember thinking, I'm a product of Oklahoma City. I grew up in Oklahoma City. I'm the first generation on my side of the family to be an Oklahoman and to be from Oklahoma City. And I remember driving by that as a child and seeing things eventually over time disappear, over time disappear, over time disappear, to when I left in 1999, like a lot of folks my age did. Didn't think I would come back, but not only did I come back in 2016, but I came back with a husband and two kids. And I didn't even recognize where I was when I would drive down that street. It took me a few years to really acclimate myself to understanding where I was. And I thought about what Sherry said and the fact that I never had that experience. But in a few short years, maybe even less at the completion of this project, I'm going to be dropping my daughter Ruby and my son Toussaint to, it'll probably be more than 35 cents, but to drop them off to go to that theater. Isn't that incredible to know how legacy is preserved and history is preserved and what that means for our communities and for the generations of Oklahomans to come? Because those are the memories that are going to anchor my kids into the city in a way that I never had the opportunity to receive. So they're going to be sitting around like a lot of you in the future and celebrating spaces that I never even had an opportunity to be a part of. And so this is so personal to us, as I know it is to a lot of you. And again, we're really grateful for you to be here.
So for me, not being from here, I'm from up the turnpike. I'm a Hornet, not a Trojan. And I see a few friends here just in case anything pops off. Hey, the Renaissance is happening in Oklahoma City, so I'm thankful for those of us who've been able to come back here. But Gabrielle reminded me when we lived in LA, one of the things that I was working on was the Golden State Mutual Life Insurance Company. They had an incredible art collection. They had one of the best art collections, African American art collections in the country. And after the company failed, they sold off pieces piece by piece. So you had Charles White pieces and Elizabeth Catlett pieces and things that made their way all across the country. And unfortunately, we weren't able to preserve some of those pieces. So in many ways, helping to preserve this theater, it gives me another chance to preserve history that is so important. And I'm passionate about it for the reasons that Gabrielle said, just as for my own love of history and preserving those spaces. So with that, we want to bring to the stage Mrs. Jewel Jones. All right, so
You want to hear Mr. The James family? Mr. Jewel?
we'll do Mr.
All right. Well, I have the great honor of reading what is honestly a far too short bio for Miss James, or excuse me, for Miss Jones. Um, Miss Jewel Jones was born right here in Oklahoma City. But due to the entrepreneurial nature of the family business at the time, she grew up in Harlem, New York, living with her paternal grandparents and attending school there for a time. She relocated back to Oklahoma City in the sixth grade. She attended Dunbar Elementary School before going to boarding schools in Texas and North Carolina. And she returned to graduate from Douglas. So I know that's going to get a little something out there.
Yeah, all right, all right.
She has been a resident of Anchorage, Alaska since 1967. And it says here an enduring force, but in my reading of her, it says she was a predominant force in Anchorage local government, serving for 32 years, over 6 mayors in the public health field. She is now retired. She has worked in the nonprofit community development and helping develop organizations, arts revitalization, and she is also a member of Alaska's Women's Hall of Fame. So we are so thankful to have you back home with us.
Let's start with Ms. Jewel before we bring in Mr. James.
Okay. So, let me see, you got you here? Okay, perfect. I had the great honor again of talking with you the other day and learning a little bit about your family history. And, you know, your family broke through so many barriers to design and build and fund the Historic Jewel Theater. And it brought so much to the community, so much joy. Um, and it's still a critical cultural asset. Can you share a little bit what it meant for you as a young Black girl, seeing your family run the Jewel? and operate the theater, and how it kind of, shaped your experiences and what you've gone on to do in your life.
Well, thank you. Absolutely. It was, a wonderful experience. And just to see the effort and the revitalization and the preservation uh, that I've seen this week, uh, it's just been reimagined in my mind. Um, I was like, you said 35 cents. That was the inflation price. I remember
Wow.
when it was 25 cents.
Wow.
Yeah. And, it was a mecca. It was a natural. It wasn't a place that, you had to go downtown or you had to go somewhere else. You walked, so much of Northeast 2nd, Northeast 4th. Our family home was on Northeast 7th. The James family home was on Ninth, and it was just, you walked around and you were a part of. And I came from that generation that either said, somebody told me you did so and so, you go get the switch,
Mm.
and I would get the skinny one, and then she'd go get the big one. Or someone would call and said, "You wait till I tell your mother. However, I'm going to start." And I had all of these chastisements all the way through. So by the time I got home, I understood very clearly. But I grew up in New York, and it was the entrepreneurial nature of this family, the James family, that they were so busy doing so many things. I went to New York to live with my paternal grandparents and stayed there until my grandmother died, and then I came back to Oklahoma in the 6th grade. So I didn't have the years of experience from elementary years going forward. But the 6th grade year was really quite amazing. And that's when I, had an opportunity to see a little bit of the business and around, the Morgan family, the Hall family, the Richardson family. All of those families lived on Northeast 7th. So it was a great opportunity just to be a part of that experience and what entrepreneurs were doing. But the one thing I want to say in getting to the Jewel, it didn't start there. That was kind of like phase 2. J. Cola was basically the linchpin that created the wealth as it was for the James family. Uh, my cousin and I were kind of trying to figure that out today. How did all of that come about? Because my grandfather came in from Opelousas, Louisiana. Was going to Langston University. He met my grandmother, married her when she was 13 years old. She never finished high school, but she was, or even elementary school, basically. But she was an absolutely brilliant woman. If she had really had the opportunity to go to school, there's no telling what might have happened, because with that limited or no education, she had that kind of mother wit that said, I can do anything, Jim Crow is not going to stop me. And she did. So it was the J. Cola franchise, or the making of the pop, that allowed them to really explore and spend that capital in all parts of the community. It was J. Cola. And from there, they were able to buy and develop real estate and the vision of the Jewel, the theaters um, throughout the state, and otherwise businesses, happened for them. So it was just a great opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that there were many jewel theaters across the state of Oklahoma that were started by this family, which is absolutely incredible legacy. Do you have any stories that maybe, I know that you were kind of in and out of Oklahoma during that time, but do you have any stories or memories of stories your mother would tell about the jewel and their experience running that business?
Well, that's a part of what I would like to share with the audience, and to say not many. And that is very, very unfortunate. You know, if we don't take the opportunity with our children today to talk about what has been, it's not about what you can do, but to have that background, and I miss that. I always intended, I always wanted to, but things get in the way. And now I realize how unimportant those things were. So I didn't get all of the stories. But what I did find out, you know, I thought my grandfather was pretty mean. Uh, you know, he was the only man I've ever known that had gray eyes. And they were pretty piercing, and I thought pretty scary. So I wasn't around my grandfather as much as I was my grandmother. But they were a team, they were partners. They both had their roles in what they did. My grandfather was the business guy. He made the formulas, he made the soda. My father came to work after he and my mother married in New Jersey. And he ran the operation, so to speak, and drove the trucks. But it was from J. Cola that the wealth of the family, that it was, gave them an opportunity to buy into the real estate and commercial businesses.
I have one other question. I think when we were talking on Zoom the other day, you had mentioned that you had described the Jewel as the anchor of the community during that time.
Yes.
What does it mean for you to come back and visit to see that it is once again going to serve as the anchor in the revitalization of that same community?
It's overwhelming. And my cousin and I have talked about, can you believe this is happening? And this is the anchor. And I have a very interesting parallel to this story because in Anchorage, Alaska, where I've lived for 50 years, the one historic building that was the anchor was called the Fourth Avenue Theater. It was the most elegant, beautiful theater, similar but in larger stature, with frescoes on the wall. And that was the place in the 60s, 70s, 80s that everybody was. And urban renewal, development, corporations came in a couple of years ago, and nobody ever thought that the Fourth Avenue Theater would be demolished. So we had the backing, and still people today say, how can that happen? How did that happen? But philanthropy was there. People that had history, it was the anchor of the downtown area. And overnight, it was sold. The company came in, and it's a big hole in the wall, and people are still astonished. So I make that parallel to what I see, this 100-year-old building with original brick, as we heard today described, hand, uh,
Hand
just
laid.
hand laid. To know that it's even standing to that degree is such a testament. So when I think of it as an anchor, the legacy, the beginning of a new legacy, I am absolutely in awe.
Awesome. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
It is.
Yes, thank you. Um, as you talk about that building, it reminds me many of us never thought the First Disciples Church on 36th Street, the egg church, would be gone. And then you don't pay attention, and next thing you know, it's gone. And so it's a testament, or it's a warning to us, I should say, of what needs to be done. I will note that when Ms. Jewell was talking about the bottling company, she said pop. I know some of y'all are soda folks, some of y'all are cola, cold drink. It's pop. Ms. Jewell said it's pop.
It's pop.
It's pop. But that gives us a chance to talk about the company a little bit, and then I want to bring up Mr. James. So the James owned the soda bottling company, J. Cola, out of their home when other soda companies refused to distribute their product in the Black community. J. Cola grew to heightened success and eventually caught the attention of Coca-Cola bottling plant in Oklahoma, which ultimately invested in and consulted with the Jameses and helped to rapidly expand J. Cola's production. As a result, Coca-Cola was one of the first companies that started hiring black delivery drivers and bottling plant workers in Northeast Oklahoma City with fair compensation, which further strengthened workforce development in the community. In the 1940s, the company sponsored an Oklahoma City Negro baseball team, the J. Cola Giants. Right? So just a little bit more history about what J. Cola was about. With that, I want to bring up Mr. James. Thank you. No, good to see you. So, William, or Bill James, is the nephew of Percy and Hattie James. He was born and raised in Oklahoma City's northeast side. His father, William Sr., was Percy James's brother. His childhood home, which is still standing on Northeast 7th Street, is literally within blocks of the Jewel. He attended Blessed Martin Elementary School, then a neighborhood Catholic school, and graduated from Mount St. Mary's Catholic High School. Bill attended the University of Oklahoma and Oklahoma City University. He currently resides in Midwest City, and he retired from the FAA, or Federal Aviation Administration, in 2007. And he is excited about the prospects that the restoration of the Jewel will bring to the community. So thank you. Thank you. So, and this is really for both of you. As descendants of the Jameses, what do you believe your hope would be for the Jewel Theater, and just what do you envision in your wildest dreams, right, for the community when you come back from Alaska or come back from Midwest City in a few years? What do you hope to see going on in the Northeast side and on 4th Street?
Well, for me, just looking at the building, and it's almost kind of like the naked city. It's there alone. And I remember what it was, what it looked like. And as I stood there today and looking directly across the street, I said, oh, that's Leora's beauty salon. That's where it was. That was such a place, and it had as much significance in the beauty culture world for Black Oklahoma as the Jewel Theater, the drugstore, the Richardsons down the street that had the gas stations. So all of that came back as a memory. And then I saw nothing else, vacant land. But I also saw the potential, or still see the potential. I'm even more excited about what can be, as long as we control it, as long as we don't lose it. And that, for me, is the key. That's all that's left, but it will go the wayside of the 4th Avenue Theater or any other things that have been destroyed or taken away, collapsed from the scourge of urban renewal, very much the same in Anchorage, Alaska, 4,000 miles away, but the same basic thing happened there. So we've got to be strong. We've got to make sure that that anchor didn't stand for 100 years just to be destroyed and to crumble. Yeah. You know, I can never say any more thank yous to Arthur Hurst. If Arthur hadn't said, well, I think I'd like to kind of try to see if I can hold on to it, and it happened, and it has not been easy, I'm very sure. You know, I am sure that there have been many, many offers, because once it's gone, then you have a clear vision from downtown to all the way to Martin Luther King. Wow. And everything in between. Yeah. And we had homes, and we can have more. So as long as we control it and don't let it slip away, fight with everything that we have to preserve that, then whatever the vision is, it was built, it had been, but I think the goal is what it can be.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bill.
I don't know how much I can add to that. But as you said, I lived within a stone's throw of that building. I grew up on Northeast 7th, and then I later moved on North Cape. And when I would go to work each day, I would always pass that building. And I never really, I knew it existed, but it was always the question how long it would have existed. And I didn't know at the time that Arthur Hurst had purchased the building. I didn't know if it was actually, under any ownership at all. But today, when I was listening to some of the speakers about what the future of the building would be, I made some notes here. And one of the things I think that the James family would like to be is a cultural beacon, one that we can serve as a gathering place for arts to thrive, bring people together to celebrate creativity and shared experiences. Another one, of course, is preservation of our heritage. We would want it to remain a symbol of resilience, preserving the historical charm while evolving to meet the needs of the future generations. And of course, a space for inclusivity. Envision the theater as a space where everyone feels welcome, regardless of their background, fostering connections and understanding within the community. And of course, a source of inspiration, with the hope that Jewel will inspire individuals, especially young people. We talked about the program that's going on at Douglas with filmmaking. So that's to dream big, pursue their passions, and contribute positively to their community. And of course, honoring our family legacy. So to continue the traditions of making the Jewel a cornerstone of the local community, hosting events and programs that align with their values of togetherness and shared growth, incorporate a tribute to my uncle within the theater, such as a plaque or exhibit, a dedication event that acknowledges his role in its history. And finally, of course, educational programs. We talked about the programs that are going on at the high school. We also could develop workshops, lectures, and artistic residencies to celebrate the history of the theater and contribute to the James family, inspiring others to value their own legacies. And that's the thing I kind of really feel that I like, because when I was growing up as a kid, I kind of took the theater and the J. Cola for granted. It never really dawned on me that that was something that was particularly special that I should learn more about. It was just sort of, everybody has an uncle that has a soda pop, and everybody has an uncle that has a theater. And so as a result of that, I really don't know a whole lot of how that all came about. It was just something that was there, and we took it for granted. And when it disappeared, we didn't really think that much about it, except that the building remarkably remains. And I guess it was going to say, we'll show you. We're going to be here for the rest of the generations. But anyway, to continue, we could do storytelling and heritage preservations, create an oral history, as I think you all have mentioned. So there's so many things that we can do, and it's just really as my cousin says, it's really overwhelming for the both of us to see that this is becoming to fruition. I mean, it wasn't in my wildest dreams that that would ever occur, particularly in my lifetime, and I'm approaching on the other side of 80 years old, so so I'm really thrilled to see that actually take place.
It's incredible.
Man, each time I meet a member of this family, it reminds me that black don't crack. Golly. Golly. Goodness. I was having lunch with someone earlier this week about some of the families, right? If you came to Oklahoma City in the past 10 years, you probably don't know who Robert S. Kerr is or Dean McGee. You see these streets, and in the same way that you had, people who did incredible things on the west side of 235, there were people who were doing incredible things on the east side of 235 as well. And so, Gabrielle, when she was talking with you earlier this week, said, you mentioned the Slaughters, the Morgans, the Randolphs, the Richardsons, the Combses, the Washingtons, the Edwards. I didn't know that Mr. Washington was a drummer for Duke Ellington.
Is that right?
Is
Yes,
that
yes,
Yeah.
Jack Washington. Yes.
right? So these are stories that we've got to not to add more homework to Vanessa and all the other stuff she's doing, right? But we've got to make sure we keep these stories going, or else they get lost.
Companies for Mahalia Jackson. It was.
Well,
Oh, we were just trying to. I kind of remember this, but I can't remember the lady's name. But there was a musician that was down on 7th Street. I'm sorry, that was down on 7th Street that actually, the gentleman became the accompanist for Mahalia Jackson, and I can't remember what the person's name is, unfortunately.
Wow.
the more you know. So thank you for that. We want to pivot now, and we want to talk about specifically economics, right? And so at this time, we want to bring up Joanne Davis, who is the executive director for the OKC Black Chamber. Yeah.
Miss Joanne Davis is, again, these bios are far too short for all of y'all, is a military brat who was born in Macon, Georgia, the child of a football coach and an elementary school teacher. After her father's passing, her mother remarried a military man, and she subsequently completed high school in Shreveport, Louisiana. Joanne married her high school sweetheart, Carvel Davis, and through his military service moved to Oklahoma City. She worked at Tinker Air Force Base for 35 years, having served through multiple areas in contracting and as a small business director, and retired as a strategic source manager for the Air Force Sustainment Center. Whoa, okay. Since 2020, she has served as the executive director for the Oklahoma City Black Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you. We also want to bring to the stage my friend and mentor, Dean Stanley Evans. So I'm going to read his bio, but again, it doesn't do him justice. Dean Evans is from Northeast Oklahoma City with strong family ties to the community. He made history as the first African American to hold the title of a dean of any law school in the state when he became assistant dean at the University of Oklahoma College of Law in 2003. In that role, he doubled minority enrollment and helped achieve a 100% minority bar passage rate multiple times. A decorated Army veteran with 32 years of service, he commanded Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, served as Dean of the Command and General Staff College, and led a $120 million congressional project for a cutting-edge instruction facility. As chair of the Oklahoma Human Rights Commission, he oversaw human rights investigation and advanced policies promoting justice and equity. He co-founded the Oklahoma Lawyers for America's Heroes program, assisting over 4,000 veterans and their families, and led the Make a Will program, providing financial planning to over 900 African American families. That's huge. His trailblazing work earned him numerous honors, including induction into the Oklahoma Military Hall of Fame, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame class of 2021, and the Distinguished Service Medal. I will, before y'all clap, let me tell you, that's what he put on the paper. I graduated OU Law in 05. I was a 1L when Stan was a 3L. This man walked off the stage with his diploma and then immediately became a dean as a Fulbright colonel in his second, maybe third career. I don't know. Stan is tough, y'all. Stan is tough. So, you know, people like to say Stan the man. No, Stan is the man. So as we pivot and talk about economic development, right? We've talked about the Jewel as a safe space for joy, connection, for positive representation and economic power in the 1900s. It was a multifaceted space that served the community as a gathering hub for live music and Black artists who were banned from white entertainment spaces. Additionally, it stood as an anchor of 4th Street, of course, that was a critical business corridor. Black cooperative economics played a crucial role in fostering resilience, empowerment, and economic independence within the Northeast community. And as efforts to restore the Jewel continue, we want to think about how we deeply consider the role of it being an economic asset that is not only restored as a theater, but also an economic catalyst for the entire neighborhood once again. So having said all that, how can partnerships and strategies employed by historical Black entrepreneurs like Percy and Hattie James inspire new models of economic collaboration and wealth building within Black communities?
Okay, who first?
You got the mic.
You got the mic.
Well, I have to make notes. So,
Okay.
first thing I said here is if you don't know your value, you cannot determine your worth. And so, too often, we've never recognized historically or even currently how economically valuable we are to our city, to our state, and to our country. And we've kind of, as a result of where we come from as people of color, we've always been diminished in what we provide. Far too long, our system has kept our value currently and historically from us, and thus have kept us from knowing and controlling our true worth, both monetarily and psychologically. So having said that, how can this revitalization of what your family created spurn more? And it does. It stood the test of time. Stood the test of time. And now through the ingenuity of these young people in this room, because I'm on the other side, close to 70, that we see what you're doing and we appreciate it and we are excited about what you're doing, and we are doing everything in our power, and I'm sure Stan feels the same way, to ensure that what you dream and what you're doing, that we push you forward. You have history on your side, but we need more than history. And we also need folks out here in the audience to know that when it comes to fruition, you got to buy Black.
Yes.
You got to make sure that your money stays in your community, because that's how it's going to succeed. And I know we have our issues, but what community doesn't? But we've got to turn our money over 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times with each other. And that's how we create our economic power.
Love that. I like that.
I have so many things to say. I don't even know where to start.
Hey, it's your time.
Well, I'm going to start with Stephen Butler. He mentioned the fact that it's important. And he talked a little bit about me, and he didn't really talk about what was important to me. Stephen Butler was important to me. Dean House sitting right there is important to me. As I look back over here, there's a state representative who's an attorney who's important to me. Everyone in this room is important to me. As we talk about revitalization, we have to talk about it at first on the big level, but we also have to talk about it on the little level. And when I think about Stephen, I think about him for several reasons. Once, he might have mentioned that we were students at the same time. I got upset one night, and I decided to walk away from an organization. And Steve came to me and said, "Stan, you can't do that." He says, "You're the only old guy here." But what he told me, and I didn't understand it when he said it, but I understood it since. We that have been through have to reach down and reach back and bring back those people later. And so thank you, because a part of who I am is a part of who you made me realize that I needed to be. So thank you. Miss Jewel, I have to tell you, I lived in Anchorage, Alaska. I lived in Anchorage, Alaska in the 80s. In Anchorage, Alaska in the 80s had a vibrant American community, vibrant African American community. In the 1980s in Anchorage, Alaska, we had Juneteenth parades. In 1980s in Anchorage, Alaska, we had all kind of activities and organizations going on. This lady, who's from Oklahoma City, was a part of making that community up there become a part of who we are. So I just want to say thank you for that. You didn't know I knew that, did you? No, seriously, when we came in, I kept looking at her, and I'm trying, I know this lady, but it's not from Oklahoma City. But here's the other thing. I'm also a child of the Jewel Theater. And as a child of the Jewel Theater, what I remember in the 1940s and 1950s in Oklahoma, somebody mentioned 35 cents, and it was already corrected. It was 25 cents. It cost a dime to go to the theater, a dime for the popcorn, and the nickel was for a nickel lollipop. And so I remember that so clearly, because here, I'm going to just kind of, I feel like a better term, strengthen some things that you guys already said. In our community, everybody knew everybody, and every parent was trusted to discipline every child if it was needed. She said, they mentioned that they live on 7th Street and 9th Street. The names of the people they mentioned, I also knew. But from where we were, it was nothing for us to walk all the way over to the Jewel Theater on our own in our community, because our community was that strong and our community was that tight, to go to the movie. And I just clearly remember that. I also remember right by the theater, for those of you that don't remember, if you look up the hill, there's Douglas High School, right there. It's now called something else. I've lost track because it's been changed about 3 times, but Douglas High School is right there. If you look up the hill just a little bit farther, the only church that's left is 5th Street Baptist Church. Those are, again, pillars of our community that are still there. So when I think of the Jewel Theater, I think of here's a pillar. It's standing there alone, and you're right. I drive down 4th sometimes just to go down there and to have these memories. I remember the library that was there. There was an African-American library. It was the only place we could go. I remember the funeral homes that were right up and down the street. I remember the YMCA that was right there on 4th Street, that was right there, which was the only YMCA we could go to. I also remember Pulliam's Barbecue. Pulliam's Barbecue, which was right there. And you could smell it about 6 blocks away. And I say all that because, we've lost some things in our community. And doing the events like tonight and the things that flow out of the events tonight are the things that help us move forward. There are people right here in this room that have chosen to move right back to that community to live. And I'm so appreciative of the fact that they've chosen to do that, because that's the way that we reestablish our community. Somebody made me mad ago. They mentioned east of 235. There was no 235 back then.
Yeah.
There was no 235. 235 was a part of the destruction of our neighborhood. It really was. And we look at the neighborhood now, the potential is there to put us back where we need to be economically, put us back where we need to be physically, because we have families that are moving in that neighborhood that are developing and growing kids there. So I just think tonight is a rare opportunity and also a rare way from us of age to say thank you to all of you that are interested in moving this thing forward.
Dean Evans, I fully agree. Joanne, I fully agree. Again, coming from Tulsa and having looked at what Greenwood was before, how a dollar would turn over 36 times before it would leave that community, and thinking about now how we get paid, Trader Joe's gets that dollar, Whole Foods gets that dollar. Like it's immediately gone. Or Cinemark or Harkins or whoever gets that dollar, but the opportunity for those dollars to remain in our community through the revitalization of the Jewel Theater, it's a small piece, but it's a critical piece, so I'm thankful for it. So thank you all.
And I will say, if you are not a member of the Oklahoma City Black Chamber, and we need to renew our membership. That's why I'm saying this as a reminder out loud. So, Ms. Joanne, well, please join in that effort. It's another way that we're building community and understanding the resources that are available in our community. And the work that she is doing and has done is directly connected to the opportunities that we are seeing develop in our community currently. And we're so grateful for you. So thank you.
At this time, we want to bring forward Ms. Anita Arnold.
Now this bio, I keep saying it, but this one is ridiculously too short. Anita Arnold is the author of 6 African American history books on Oklahoma City. She's a broker, property manager, and has owned 2 businesses. She is the recipient of many honors locally and nationally, including the Governor's Arts Award. And last week, she was inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, which is it's the highest honor any Oklahoman can receive, and she was looking fabulous while she was being honored. Yes, she was. She's recognized in the nonprofit field and collaborates with national organizations such as the John F. Kennedy Center of Performing Arts, and she's currently the executive director of Black Liberated Arts, Inc. I want to start by just simply thanking Miss Arnold because something very recently happened. I'm a big believer in the arts. It is my passion. It's where I serve in my nonprofit work and boards. And my daughter was a dancer with Metropolitan School of Dance. And this past year, I think it was in 2023, I got to sit and watch my daughter perform and learn choreography from the Alvin Ailey School in Revelations, which for little dancer Gabrielle, who grew up watching those things on PBS, whose mother, when she got paid to take trips to New York, my mom would make sure those people paid to take her little art-loving daughter along, and I got to see those things. And I came back to Oklahoma with my kid, and I saw my daughter perform things that I had only seen on a stage and on TV with people that I admired my whole life. It was one of the most incredibly important experiences of my life, and it happened right here in Oklahoma. So I never got to tell you that. So I wanted to thank you for that because I sat over there in Paige Woodson and I watched my daughter do something that I'd only seen on a stage or on TV. It was absolutely incredible. So thank you. And it's one of the many things that you have contributed to this city, both artistically and so many other areas. Are we going to do another introduction?
Yes. Let me
Did
also.
add that.
No, it's all right. It's all right. It's about Ruby. It's all good.
I know.
Let me also bring up Miss Kimberly Francisco. Kimberly Statham Francisco is a lifelong resident of Northeast Oklahoma City. Her professional experience and roots in Oklahoma City assist her in advancing economic and social resources in areas of Oklahoma City that have traditionally been under-resourced or disinvested. She currently does this as Executive Director of Progress OKC. In her most recent role as manager of the Ralph Ellison Library, she worked with state and local agencies, community-based nonprofits, and local school systems to provide programming and services based on community needs. She led a system-wide effort to curate a 100-year history of the Ralph Ellison Library in collaboration with community stakeholders, leaders, and individuals. She has seen the disconnect between leaders, financiers, and developers and the needs and desires of underrepresented people who live in impacted neighborhoods during her time in Northeast OKC. She received her Bachelor of Science degree in journalism from OSU and a Master of Education degree in early childhood ed from OCU. She has been married for 35 plus years to Anthony Francisco with 3 adult children and 4 grandchildren and a 5th on the way. All right, so thank you. Please help me to welcome Miss Kimberly Francisco.
We want to kind of transition this conversation to talk about the importance of preserving cultural legacies and institutions. In the context of the Jewel Theater in Northeast Oklahoma City, cultural preservation is absolutely critical in honoring the contributions of Black entrepreneurs, of artists, of civil rights organizers. And we know that these efforts reestablish and grow economies. We know that they create belonging, they build community, and they extend legacies for generations. One of the things that I wanted to ask you all about is when we talk about cultural preservation, and we understand that it is what safeguards both tangible and intangible elements of a community's heritage. Can you talk about what some of both of those tangible and intangible elements are? What is it that they actually preserve and keep within communities?
Again, it is on. Yeah, you know, I think first and foremost, we're living in such a time of erasure, and where our histories are being erased, and space and place aren't there. We've heard, we know that the Jewel Theater is really last remaining African-American owned business building there on Northeast 4th. And it's a mere, as you said, you don't almost recognize it, right? We know what occurred in the community around urban renewal. Yes, Douglas High School does still sit up on the hill, but it isn't any longer Douglas High School, but the building is still there. So, within those tangible spaces, there are memories, right? Mm-hmm. Within that space, when you drive past, it elicits certain memories, right? My family lived at the corner of Northeast 4th and High, right? And so I have all these stories from my mother and my father about their experiences within Northeast Oklahoma City and attending Dunbar and Douglas, and then my own lived experiences. But what urban renewal allowed is further erasure of our history, right? Because those homes are no longer there, those buildings are no longer there, those churches, the spaces and places where we were safe, the spaces and places that we provided for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it then, and as opportunities, if you want to call them that, opened up around integration, then the movement of our people, the forced movement around urban renewal, but then as other spaces opened up, and then, it is a aspect of human nature, possibly, when things have been denied, for you to assume that when something then is made available, that it must be better, right? Mm-hmm. It must provide something different that I haven't had. And so when we look at that and we think about what we had to provide because we did not have access, it wasn't that we were providing for ourselves just because, hell, we wanted to, right? But we couldn't go to the doctor across town, and we couldn't go to a dentist, and we weren't allowed to attend certain schools and be in certain spaces. So then we provided it for ourselves, yes, and we created safe havens. But as those safe havens then are erased, as those buildings are destroyed, then if we aren't careful, what you were saying around how we share those stories, we have always been a people of oral history, right? And so we have to continue that, right? And it is around, that recall, Okay, so for me to share with my grandchildren the stories that my mother shared of her experiences of attending Douglas High School and the Douglas High School marching band coming down Fourth, and what it looked like when they came down Fourth versus when they were downtown and when they turned that corner on High, and the High Steppers and how they showed out, right? Because it was a sense of pride, right? And the community was there. The images and the pictures that my mother would talk about leaving her house at Fourth and High and walking to Tabernacle, and wanting to spend the dime that she had for Sunday school at the theater, but knowing somebody was going to tell if she did. Well, those were all, and again, if we aren't careful, because that building still standing is representation of our resilience. Even if at times we don't feel that we have that resilience, the damn building's standing there saying, I'm still here. We are still here, right? And so it then behooves us to ask, then what next? What else are you going to do? Because, if we aren't careful, it too will go away, right? And if we aren't careful, the manner in which the redevelopment of our community, it will become unrecognizable. And then if we haven't been particularly diligent in sharing those stories, then folk would think maybe you just made that up. Did that really happen? Was that really there? And so it is a physical space, but it's the intangible. Yeah. And the intangible is what has sustained us as a people, because within the intangible are the stories, are the memories. It's trauma. All right, it is a whole. The space I work in, that space elicits trauma every single day, and it's a reminder when I drive down Fourth and drive through my community, and I see what has been taken and what hasn't been replaced or reinvested in. That's trauma. But there is an importance in telling the stories, because in that intangible is what is going to give us the hope and the resilience to keep standing, just like the jewel. Keep standing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Miss Arnold, I want to specifically ask you, in recognizing the jewel as a center of the ability for people to experience art and creativity within our community, what is the importance of the arts in how we have made place for ourselves, in creating space for ourselves, in holding history? What has been the importance of that in the artistic community that the Jewel can once again help bring?
Well, as I see it, the Jewel Theater represents the future. It is often said that if you don't know your history, you don't know your future. Right. And consequently, Black Liberty Arts Center, which I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing today, having come from a different background, we are intent on that history, so much so that we have changed our mission statement, which used to emphasize, the fine arts and then the education, and now we've added history. We know that we can't go into perpetuity without that history. I didn't think that I would be writing books. I always loved books growing up, and I always loved the Jewel Theater too. I was born in Tecumseh, Oklahoma, and came to Oklahoma City when I was 13 years old. And I've gone to, let's see, who was that was talking about Booker T? I think it was Mr. Butler. I've gone to Douglas all my life. In Tecumseh, we went to, an all-black school, and it was Douglas Elementary School. I came to, yes, and all I know is Douglas, so I'm sticking with Douglas. So I came to Oklahoma City to Douglas Middle School at age 13, and I had never seen anything like it before. I always tell people the bright lights got me. The bright lights came with being a student at Douglas High School, junior, senior high school. It was so full of our culture. We learned who we were, at Douglas High School. In recent years, that's come out of the curriculum. You don't get a chance to know this great history. One of the things that I found out in moving around the country, and I have lived in other places, such as Memphis, Tennessee, twice, Sumter, South Carolina, Washington, D.C. twice, and Maplewood, New Jersey, which is not too far from New York. So I've had lots of cultural experiences around the country, but I was always amazed at some of the people that I worked with, on the East Coast. They never heard of Oklahoma. They don't know about the rich history of Oklahoma. And I didn't think that I would be writing about it. I thought one of these days maybe I would. But I sat down in the seat as executive director, having moved from the board of directors. When I was living in New Jersey, I didn't want to pay taxes one year, so I sent a check down to Black Liberated Arts Center, and they remembered it. And as soon as I got off the plane and they knew I was going to stay here, they invited me to be on the board. They remembered the check. So anyway, fast forward. So I was into the arts. We were doing the arts. And I knew history was important, and I had tried to introduce it to folk on the East Coast. In fact, I'm still introducing it to people on the East Coast. But you never know, and I found out that being a resource can be very important to the future and to the history. Black Liberated Arts Center is now over 50 years old. Over 50 years old in this community. And we're headed into perpetuity. In other words, we don't have to go down and fill out the paperwork anymore at the State Department, because we've gained that stature. And so it feels good to know that you're going into the future, but you want to go into the future with something. And so our history will follow us. I started writing books about it. People asked me what my inspiration was. They probably thought it was the history I knew and that sort of thing, but it wasn't really. Someone from the History Center, the Oklahoma History Center, came by and asked to borrow some pictures that he knew I had of places like the Aldrich Theater, other Leoras. I had those pictures because we had photographers like Mr. Seward and Mr. Simmons who took pictures of everything anybody did in those schools, those pictures. And sadly, most of those pictures went in the dumpster, when the person died. And I'm sorry to tell you that, but we have recovered quite a bit of the history. So, and I have it. I'm just going to be honest about it. I've got it. Come see me. So, at any rate, I had lent these pictures, and I forgot I loaned the pictures out. And Bill Welge, I'll call his name, came by one day with 2 books, and he said, "Oh, these are yours." And I thought, what is this? It had been about a couple of years, and he said, "Oh, I wrote this history." And we were only like a chapter in there, and I thought, this is not good, but I mean, it's better than nothing. But shortly thereafter, the marketing guy from Arcadia Publishing, which is the nation's history press located in South Carolina, he came by to try to get me to start selling these books, and I wouldn't do it. I said, no, we know who we are. We're not a bookseller. And one thing led to another, and he saw that I wasn't going to be interested, and he went away for a minute. But then he came back and he said, aha, I've got a new book that you might be interested. He's trying to get me to sell him. I asked, what's the name of the book? He said, Spring Lake. And I said, Spring Lake? I got off my soapbox, and I just chewed him out right on the spot. I said, I don't know anybody that want to buy that old book, blah, 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 blah. And he was just, being horrified. And he said, well, they told me it was history. I said, negative history, not the people I know. I'll never do it. So in my rant, I said, I need to write a book. That's what I need to do. I mean, and that was my inspiration. I opened my mouth and stuck my foot in it. So that started the history. But the Jewel Theater is part of what I have written. As a matter of fact, the history is also captured, and the Jewel Theater is a part of that in an exhibition that we have that I'll just call it out the way it is. The History Center kept our exhibit for more than 20 years and wouldn't give it back, claimed it as their own, was getting ready to send it to Europe. It was developed by Ron Tarver, who came down from Philadelphia. That's right. You don't know the struggles. You just don't know. Your history is in demand, really.
Yeah.
But you don't know that. And I'm here to tell you that now. But nevertheless, no attorney would help me get my exhibit back. And then change happened. And I went over after about 2 or 3 months when the new person was in charge. I wouldn't go at first. They wanted me to meet him. And when I went over, I just simply said to him, I know this is Valentine's Day and it has nothing to do with love. I said, but my attitude was bad and didn't want to holler at you. I said, so I would like to have my exhibit back. It does not belong to you. And he listened. I said, it's like stealing your birthright. Mm-hmm. You have to be careful about that history, especially when it's in demand. And when I said that, he said, well, what happened? He said, I heard something about it. Well, I just told him the story. And I said, well, I just feel like you've taken my birthright and I want it back. I had it back in 2 days. Do you hear me?
Wonderful.
Yes. So there are ways that you can, and God is good. And he knows he's on my side, and I depend on it. But we've also done a lot of other things with that history. We get into storytelling, we get into the spoken word, and those are all possibilities, for the Jewel Theater. Mm. I mean, the generations aren't speaking to each other, really. Mm-hmm. And I see Black Liberty Arts Center as a conduit, for the generations. When I say that, I'll use an example. Taylor Deneen, who is a young lady that's very talented, grew up on the stages of Black Liberty Arts Center, was a finalist on The Voice. Mm. Well, you remember that. Mm-hmm. Taylor was doing a performance for us after she really got famous, and she's very bright. And she had these musicians with her, and I asked, where'd these musicians come from that you have? Well, she found them. They're right here in Oklahoma. But they were younger people. So I asked one of the elders in the music business around here. Everybody knows him. His face has been on the billboards. And I said, do you know this person? Do you know that person from the group that she had? And he said, well, I know one. I don't know these others. I said, why don't you know these? You're right here. You know all the musicians in town. And he said, well, I just don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? I cannot accept that. Why don't you know? And so it finally turned out, he said, we don't talk to each other. And so that spoken word is very important. And the generations coming, you're not going to pass the baton the way you should pass the baton if you don't start speaking to each other.
Right.
That's wonderful.
And yeah, and so I say that I find this totally unacceptable. So we've done a big push, to bring the generations together so that they can say what's on their heart and mind. And sometimes it's a harsh reality. But the point is that if you don't know your history, you don't know which way you're going. And recently, I'll say this, you don't know where your resources can come from, too. If you stay on track with the dream of a future. We have a project, Black Liberated Arts Center, right now, out at the Star Spencer area. In Spencer, like a lot of other high school students of color, and that's my primary interest because that's who I am. We don't always have the opportunity, and I'm here to bring the opportunity, but we have a project out there called the I Dream a World Youth Project.
Okay.
And so how did that come about? Well, I always start my stories with, I was minding my own business when. I was minding my own business when an email dropped into my email box. And it said, your name has been brought to our attention. We want to invite you. Listen to what I'm saying. We want to invite you to ask us for some money.
Oh, wow. I love those emails.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I thought, what? I don't know anybody. I didn't know they had a foundation, but there it was. And they laid out what they would like to see done with this money. And it's to raise the grade, the students to a level where they're on grade point when they take these tests, these state tests. They're comprehending and reading at the 3rd and 4th grade, juniors and seniors I'm talking about. And so I don't see that as an insurmountable task. I see that if the school is properly resourced and the teachers are teaching, I always operate off the theory, if the learner didn't learn, then the teacher didn't teach for whatever reason. It could have been under-resourced, the teacher wasn't prepared. I think Jeffrey Canada said that well. We brought him here. Jeffrey Canada from the Harlem's Kids Zone, and everybody came from the school district, from the superintendent, who was Sandy Garrett at that time, on down. All of them were sitting on the front row. And he just told us plainly that if the teacher is not teaching what they should be teaching, and they don't want to be a teacher, he said he doesn't have a problem saying, go do something else, make some shoes, anything, but get out of the classroom if you're not committed to teaching. And so he has done marvelous work, and we at Black Liberated Arts Center have some resources so that we can bring an Alvin Ailey here and your daughter can dance with us in a master class.
Yeah.
We were the ones that brought Resurrection here out at the OCCC. It's inspired by the Greenwood incident that Oprah renamed to Massacre.
Yeah, it was a massacre. Yeah.
I want to point out something that you said that I think is really important. And as I look across the room today, and the importance of this room is the ability to share stories from one generation to the other, and our responsibility to hold and remember the stories that all of you have shared this evening. I want to really thank all of you for what you have shared, because these are stories, again, I'm a from my side of the family, I'm a first generation Oklahoman, and I never learned probably 99.999% of this in school. I probably could say 100%, but I'm going to say maybe I learned something. But I never knew these stories. I didn't know the history of what was there before. And I've heard so many incredible things from all of you, not just in this setting this evening, but in other conversations. And I think all of us are so thankful for your willingness to continue, and wherever you are, is to share the stories, is to share, like, you know, one of the most impactful things I ever heard was hearing, I think your husband said, your grandparents, your husband's grandparents and your grandparents lived like across from each other, and they can literally go stand on the place where their family lived. Or hearing about the parades coming down the street and the high steppers, or learning about the notable figures in our collective history, American history, who are connected to Oklahoma, to the arts community that are connected here. We have authors and poets and people who have done incredible things all across the country, right? That have roots in the ground here in Oklahoma. And so I just want to not only I just want to take a moment to thank everyone and give some applause to all of the folks who have stood on the stage this evening. And I also want to make note of so many of, and I say young, and some of y'all could be like, what, Gabrielle? But the young people, the next generation of folks who are in this room, we have lawyers, deans, we have doctors who are running healthcare clinics, we have people who are involved in public service, who are going to be working in our state and local government. They will let you know you need to support them. We have folks who are currently serving. We have developers, people talking about building built environments. We have people who are literally building out the new environment that will be Northeast Oklahoma City, who have been visioning this for a really long time, who have made it their mission to not only hear these stories, but to take them to heart and return what was. We have artists in the room. We have folks who are educating the next generation about the real cowboys, who the real cowboys were, right? Which cowboys were black, just so we know. Yeah. Okay. Western heritage, again, that's black heritage. Yeah. We have folks who are creating who are marketing and PR executives. I'm missing a lot of faces in the room, but this is like, we're the legacy of the people who have been on the stage. And I know so many of you in your own ways are carrying that torch because it's your families, right? Or for us, we come back, it's what the legacy of our children are. And we just want to thank all of you for being in the room today. And I'll ask Mr. Butler if he has anything he wants to add for the evening.
Well, the Queen, Miss Jules, had something that she wanted to say, and I will not deny her the opportunity.
Thank you. And I think in the summation for what I said, three things. For the young people that are here, for the young people that are not here, for the parents, the grandparents that are here, what you've heard tonight was the need to share. You know, I've grown up in a place now in Anchorage, and parents are afraid of their kids. They're bigger than they are. You know, they have social media, and social media tells them you can be disrespectful. We couldn't be, but that's what happens today. But don't let that deter you. Please, please take those children. Take them to their grandparents. Take them to wherever it is, because you cannot do this again 20 years from now unless you start today and remind them. The other piece that I want to say, going back to Alaska or coming back to Oklahoma City Northeast Side is in very good hands. In very good hands. The Butlers.
Thank you.
Vanessa, Norvis, and many others, but these three I know and I've seen. And you don't know what a privilege and joy it is for me to live in a very big territory with not very many Black people, to see this level of commitment, expertise, professionalism, and they need more than support, because we get afraid often to say, well, did they go to that school, or what do they really know? You see what they know. And I thank you, thank you, thank you, Vanessa, for just putting together this incredible, extraordinary, professional presentation. And we're going to talk about you all over the country. And thank you all.
I want to, let's give another hand for Vanessa Morrison and Open Design Collective, as well as Jewel Theater Foundation, who are working to preserve this space. I ask all of you, just take a look around. Just look at all the people in the room, because we take moments like this for granted. Just look around, close your eyes, capture it, soak it up. All right, just take a photo. Just remember, take those memories. These are special moments. We don't know when we will all be together again, when we will have a chance to hear from a treasure who just happened to come to see her friend, Miss Anita, get inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. And this genius that we have doing work in the community said, well, if she's coming 4,000 miles, we're going to make this happen. And Stephen, Gabrielle, if y'all just stand up here and talk, but I'm going to put it together. But we're going to make this happen. We are blessed. We are fortunate, right, to have this happen. And I'm going to leave you with the statement of Kimberly Francisco. If that damn building is still standing, right? If that damn building is still standing, after the past few weeks, if that building can be resilient, we can be resilient. We don't want to have to do it time after time after time. We get tired, we get frustrated, but our community and the Butlerettes and the people who will come behind, those little house kids, well, Marty ain't so little no more. He ain't little no more, right? Those 5 Francisco grandchildren, right? They deserve this. Kamal's 2, the Abdul Halt's 3. These kids deserve us fighting for them. And it ain't easy, but this is the job. Whether we want it or not, this is the job. So if you don't have a friend, make a new friend tonight, because everybody in this room is committed to the work. They gave up their Friday evening to hear these stories because the work is that important. So thank y'all.
The last thing I'll say is that I want everyone to make sure that you continue to follow along with the project, the Jewel Restoration through Open Design, and begin to connect with the Jewel Theater Foundation so you can start to learn about their vision for what is going to live in that building. What movies we're going to see, what kind of movies we're going to see in there, but also continue to learn more about these stories, and continue to support one another. It's a lot of resources in this room, and Black businesses.
Yeah.
And this one, oh my gosh. And this specific space is Black owned and ran by LaToya Mason Events. So I think it's going to be a wedding in here tomorrow. It's birthday parties. It's business. It's all the things. But again, all the things that we said today, like now we know, we've heard, we've been inspired, so we have to carry it forward. So thank you all again for joining us.
Thank y'all.